Welcome back everybody to another episode on the channel, and in today's episode we are going to be talking about my top 5 lures for the early spring bass fishing. So really quick before we jump into this video guys, we are almost at 5,000 subscribers. I think we're at almost 4,500 or something like that. Once we hit 5,000 subscribers on the channel guys, we are doing a rod and reel giveaway along with a bunch of other tackle guys. So if you want to be entered in the giveaway, it's really simple. All you have to do, hit the little subscribe button, hit the little bell notification next to it. So all you got to do to enter in the giveaway at 5,000 subscribers is just subscribe to the channel. So with that being said guys, we're gonna jump into the video here now. In the springtime, this is kind of how I like to attack things, especially early spring. I like to cover a lot of water and find the schools of fish. And then, once I find the schools of fish, I like to kind of maybe, nitpick what lure I'm gonna use. But really, you wanna try to cover a lot of water. The ice is gonna be melting, the water is still gonna be, relatively cold yet, pretty cool. But you gotta find the schools of fish because they're gonna be schooled up this time of the year. So I like to cover a lot of water. So a lot of the lures I have are moving lures, but I do have some lures in there that I would use once I find that school to kind of slow things down, especially if the bite's a little tougher. So the early springtime guys, I don't fish this specific lure a ton during the season other than this time of the year, and it's a lure that I wish I could get better at fishing other than just this time of the year, but that is going to be a jerkbait guys. Now this one's still obviously wrapped up, but a jerkbait is a great lure for this time of the year. You can cover a lot of water with a jerkbait, but as well you can do a lot of different presentations with it. You can really slow it down, you can speed it up and whatnot, but a jerkbait is just a true tried lure this time of the year. If anything, I'd say it's probably the #1 lure that you could use in the early springtime just because of its versatility and the way you can work it as well. But a jerkbait is a great lure in the early spring to be using, especially in those colder water situations. Next lure that I like to use guys is a lipless crank or rattle trap. This particular color is not my favorite color to be using this time of the year. I would rather use like a red color, like an all red, something like that. That's gonna be like that craw red, I guess you could say, but I love using a lipless this time of the year. They rattle really loud. You can cover a lot of water with them. Once again, you can kind of slow it down. You can let that bait kind of sink down, and you can rip it up off the bottom. You can really do that, work it like that way, or you can do a steady retrieve. You can stop, pause. There's a lot of things you can do with the lipless that make it very versatile. Early springtime, I really like to rip it off the bottom and then let it sink and then rip it again, or just get that nice steady retrieve and then just pause it. But ripping it around, and letting it just like slowly kind of come down in the water column, I find that's a great way to work a lipless crank in the early springtime. Along with that being said, with the lipless cranks guys, on a sunny day, sometimes I like to switch it up to like more of like a chrome color, like this chrome blue and silver. That tends to work really nice on like sunny days. You can get that shimmer in the water. This thing is just an absolute killer color. I think it's gonna work great on those really sunny days especially, but like I said, on those sunny days I really like to use like a really shiny chrome color. Another great lure for this time of the year guys is going to be a square bill crankbait. I absolutely love using a square bill this time of the year. I love bouncing it off of rocks, wood, all different types of things. A square bill, you can cover a lot of water. Like I said guys, we're trying to cover water, we're trying to find these schools of fish, and a lot of these baits that you've seen, the jerk bait, the lipless crank, the square bill, are all moving baits that are going to cover a lot of water for you. So a square bill is a great lure to use this time of the year, especially early spring. You can cover a lot of water like I said, but you can never go wrong with fishing a crankbait in the early springtime. Another lure that I love to fish guys, that I can't seem to ever get away from fishing all throughout the whole entire year, is going to be a swim jig guys. I absolutely love using a swim jig, especially with a paddle tail on there. This time of the year, especially early springtime, I'm going to switch it up to maybe like a Rage Menace or like a grub tail on the swim jig. But a swim jig is such a versatile lure, and I absolutely love fishing a swim jig guys, especially early springtime. You can cover, like I said, you can cover a lot of water with these lures guys. That is the huge thing, covering water and finding the schools. And a swim jig is just absolutely dynamite for that. I fish this all throughout the whole entire year. I really love a black and blue color. and white. Pretty much those are the two main colors I use. I don't use pretty much anything else besides black and blue and white swim jigs. I think they work great. Black and blue, I love to use it in dirty water, muddy water. And then the white, sunny days, clear, clean water. Love using a white in that particular setting. Like I said, it's a moving bait. You could cover a lot of water. Swim jigs are super versatile, easy to use. Tie it on, throw on a trailer, throw it out there, retrieve it, stop it, let it roll on the bottom, whatever you want to do with it. You can mix it up, but a swim jig is a great early springtime lure. Some of the trailers that I'm going to throw on a swim jig, guys, and I'll show you them really quick, is going to be these paddle tails. I absolutely love using the Rage swimmers, guys. These paddle tails are really good. You can switch it over to Kitech if you want. I love using the paddle tails. I think they give a really good action in the water. And then I like to switch it over to a Rage Menace, guys. Now these Rage Menace, they're just basically almost like little grubs. They don't kick off a ton of action, but they do just enough. So if I'm using the paddle tail, I'm not getting bites, guys, I like to switch it up to a Rage Menace. Also, those little curly tail grubs, you can throw those on, but pretty much the main trailers I'm going to be using on a swim jig are going to be these paddle tails, and then I'm going to switch it over probably early spring. For the most part, I'm going to run a Rage Menace. I'm going to run one of these. It's a little, like I said, smaller profile, a little bit easier of a bite for them. Now the last lure that I have for you guys is going to be a bait that kind of, when I find the school of fish and they're not biting on the reaction baits as well, or the moving baits as well, or it's just a tough bite. Sometimes early spring, guys, when you're roaming around trying to find those schools, especially when it's super early and that water's still really cold, sometimes you just have to slow down. I like to cover water, I like to find those schools, that's a huge thing, but sometimes you just need to slow down on those high percentage areas, and that's when I like to switch it up to a football finesse jig. Now this is a half-ounce football finesse jig, but this is a lure that I love to use when I've found a school of fish, or I know that there's a lot of fish in the area and they're just not biting those reaction baits, or they're just not biting, the jerk bait when I'm really, working it slow. Sometimes they're holding really tight to the bottom, especially early spring. That water's still really cold. So I like to switch it up to the football finesse jig and just slow it down. Sometimes you can even go to a Ned rig, maybe, as a little bonus lure. I would maybe go to a Ned rig, but I love fishing a football finesse jig. Now with the trailer on these, I'm gonna probably go with a crawfish style trailer. Maybe one of my Rage craws over here, I would go ahead and throw one of these on a Rage craw. But what I would probably do is I would trim it down. I wouldn't use the entire Rage craw. I would trim it down so that this profile is still pretty small. Sometimes, when especially early springtime, those fish are looking for a good bite, but they don't want too big of a presentation. So if you throw on this whole entire craw here, it's going to be a bigger presentation. Sometimes you need to trim these things down and bring in that smaller presentation. Like I said, guys, a football finesse jig in this time of the year is killer. I mainly use black and blue because I'm rocking the bottom anyway, so it's a little darker down there anyway. But black and blue is probably what I'm gonna run 98% of the time with a football finesse jig. Maybe go to like a green pumpkin color with a little bit of orange sometimes, but for the most part, black and blue just gets it done for me. So really quick, guys, those are my top 5. Some other lures that I've used in the past are glide baits. Those sometimes work really well during that time of the year as well, early springtime. You're just kind of trying to move around. And another good bonus lure, guys, is one of these little underspins here, these little paddle tails with a little underspin, especially on a sunny day. You got this little blade here that's going to kick around, it's going to flash. These things can be absolute killer. Like I said, you're moving around trying to find those schools once again, but this is a little bonus lure that's not in my top 5, but would still be a good lure to try out if you guys want to. This little sucker right here would be definitely a good option in the early springtime. So there you guys have it. Those are my top 5 lures for early spring bass fishing, along with a couple bonuses there that you could switch it up. I'm not saying that those top 5 in any order specifically, and I'm not saying that those top 5 are the only 5 that works. I'm sure there's lures that you guys have used in early springtime that work really well, and if there is a lure that I didn't suggest, go ahead and drop it in the comments below so I can see what you guys are using in the early springtime. But like I said, guys, at 5,000 subs, we're doing a rod and reel giveaway, so if you want to be entered in that giveaway, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Give it a big thumbs up if you did, and we will see you guys on the next one.